But remember the experience I shared at the beginning of my message about the missionaries who didn't trust others to take responsibility for their own development. When a teacher dominates the learning experience, he may have a sense that he is an effective teacher because his message feels compelling and resonates with his own feelings. However, by not engaging students, he likely doesn't know how the instruction is actually impacting their learning. Moreover, a single source of instruction often deprives other learners of the same deep opportunities to share what they are learning. There are many ways to allow students to share what they are learning. One of the simplest is to do this is to allow time for reflection. This can come through a learning journal or even a reflective activity as part of a discussion. This can also be done by introducing a parable, a life situation, or a personal application, and then allowing students to reflect through written observation before sharing with others. Another way to have all receive equal privilege in the learning experience is to lead a discussion with questions that invite students to think and share their insights. I used to say that if I had just 3 compelling questions, I could teach a class for an hour. In my teaching preparation, I will develop questions first by anchoring on the topic and the learning objectives of the lesson. I decide which passages of scripture, prophetic statements, or personal experience might best point to those learning objectives. Then I write and rewrite a dozen different versions of questions that I feel would help students uncover truths about those learning objectives. Some of the questions I write are more compelling than others, but others are effective at deepening questions for my anchor topic or subject. There are also ways you can make your questions and discussion environment more effective. Having 1 or 2 students dominate the discussion is no different than having the instructor dominate the instruction. When I'm asking questions in a group setting, I often allow time after I ask a question before calling on student responses. This can feel uncomfortable to a teacher who often wants an immediate response. But allowing a moment of pause does at least 2 things. First, it provides students time to reflect. Second, it provides the teacher additional time to expand the group who responds to the discussion. Remember, you don't have to call on the first hand that goes up. I have also found that asking students ahead of time what you might ask in class helps them prepare and can be particularly effective for students who are shy or feel their comments might not be valued. Remember also that inviting participation requires that the learning environment feels safe in every way. Building on a student's comment or even sending a note afterwards are ways to reinforce participation and help students feel that their participation was valued. Finally, even the best of group discussions might not allow for all or even the majority of students to participate in a limited time window. I will often take one of my anchor questions and ask students to share in pairs or small groups in ways that ensure the entire class has had at least one opportunity to share the truths they are learning with others. When we encourage learners to share the truths they are learning, we are inviting them to take ownership for their learning. Nephi teaches that the power of agency is that it allows us to act for ourselves and not be acted upon. Are our classroom settings ones that allow students to act and take ownership for their learning, or are they passive environments where students are simply acted upon as they quietly listen? If someone visited your classroom this week, would they see students being given opportunity to engage in the learning process? It is difficult to invite diligent learning if we don't allow students to share their own insights, inspiration, and observed truths. Please encourage learners to share the truths they are learning and make that part of your classroom experience.